Is the Piri Reis Map evidence of a lost civilization, or even advanced technology that we can't find today? Or is it just another ancient map? Let's find out in this week's episode of The Inexplicable. Hello and welcome back to The Inexplicable podcast, the only place in the known universe where leaving with more questions than answers means you're heading in the right direction. Today I'm going to be looking at the Piri Reis Map. This was first put on my radar by Graham Hancock in his book and also in his podcast appearances on Joe Rogan. This is quite an interesting one, very fascinating stuff regarding what the map depicts or what it supposedly depicts. And there's a lot of debate between the traditional scholars of archaeology and history versus the independent researchers on this. So we're going to look at today the physical aspects of the map, meaning what it actually shows, what it depicts, and how it was made and how it came about. And then we're going to look at the history of it and also kind of the debate surrounding it, because there's a lot of argument on what certain things depict, and some people believe it shows one thing and other people believe it shows another. So we'll go into all of that today, and hopefully by the end we can come to a conclusion on what this Piri Reis map actually shows. So I think a nice place to begin would be looking at the historical background of the man himself and the map and the creation of it. So who was Piri Reis? Well, his full name was Ahmed Muhaddin Piri, and Reis just meant captain or commander, which was normal at the time. A lot of men would put Reis at the end of their name if they were in the military or the navy of sorts. So he was an Ottoman admiral, a cartographer, and a scholar. He lived somewhere between 1470 and 1553. Like I said, so he served in the Ottoman navy under his uncle Kamel Reis during the empire's maritime expansion. Piri Reis was known for his cartographic works, especially the Kitab-i-Bahri, which was the Book of Navigation, a detailed nautical atlas and sailing guide. Now, if we move on to the creation of the map itself, this is attributed the date 1513. The map was drawn on gazelle-skin parchment, which was quite typical at the time. A lot of books were written upon animal parchments, and only about 1/3 of the original world map survives today. So the fragment that was discovered is roughly 90 centimeters by 65 centimeters, so not a large portion of it. Now, Piri's own notes say that the map was made using around 20 source maps, including charts from the time of Alexander the Great and even maps by Columbus. The map started by Piri Reis and was actually finished in Gallipoli, Turkey, which was then a major Ottoman naval base. So when was the map actually discovered? Well, it was made in 1513, but it wasn't discovered until 1929, where it was found in Istanbul's Topkapi Palace Library by a German theologian, Gustav Deissmann. He immediately recognised it as significant because of its depiction of parts of the Americas, which was extremely rare for a map that was made outside of Europe. The fragment that was found covers the western coast of Africa, the eastern coast of South America, parts of the Caribbean, and what appears to be a southern landmass, which I'll come back to this because this is what sparks a lot of debate. So we'll come back to that southern landmass. So just a little bit of historical context. The map was drawn only 21 years after Columbus's first voyage in 1492. Now, we know that the Ottomans had access to European data and knowledge through their captured charts, trade networks, and explorers. As well as this, the age of discovery was in full swing. We had the Portuguese exploring Africa and the Indian Ocean, the Spanish were crossing the Atlantic, and map-making becoming a strategic tool of empire. So, now we can ask the question, why is the map considered so mysterious? Well, there's a few different reasons. Firstly, the geographical accuracy of the map. The coastlines of Africa and South America are strikingly well proportioned for a map made in the early 1500s. And then you've got features such as the bulge of Brazil and certain river mouths that align surprisingly well with the modern maps that we have today. This sort of alignment suggests access to very high quality source charts, possibly early Portuguese portal maps that were closely guarded state secrets. Another part of the Piri Reis map that is quite mysterious, and this is probably the most mysterious and the one that has caused the most debate, and this is the southern landmass mystery. The map shows a large land at the bottom, and many early 20th century researchers thought it resembled Antarctica's coast, which was drawn without the ice, meaning it depicts Antarctica before the Ice Age. Supporters of this idea argued that the mountains and bays look like the seismic scans of Antarctica beneath the ice sheet. However, the modern analysis indicates it's likely a misinterpretation, possibly Patagonia or an exaggerated extension of South America, which was stretched due to the map projection distortions. Another feature of the map that makes it quite mysterious is just the projection of the map and the technical skill that was required to make it. So the map uses a portolan-style grid based on rhumb lines radiating from compass roses. So the portolan charts were prized for navigation accuracy within limited regions, but distort shapes over large distances, explaining the bent coastlines. Piri Reis managed to merge several projections, which could cause strange shapes or mismatched proportions when combining multiple sources. So the fact that he managed to do this is very impressive and quite indeed mysterious. And one of the last reasons that people find this so interesting is the sources that were used. Piri's annotations explicitly mention ancient source maps. Some of these might have been classical or medieval maps passed down via Arabic scholars or Mediterranean sailors. Others were likely derived from Portuguese and Spanish charts, which the Ottomans could have obtained through piracy or trade. A lot of these maps are alleged also to be from the infamous Library of Alexandria, obviously before it was burned down. So you can imagine, when you've got ancient maps and you've also got mention of the Library of Alexandria, this can cause for a very, very intriguing question. So let's not waste any time, let's get straight into the theories and explanations that people have put forward. So if we begin by looking at the historical and scholarly view, most historians would agree that the map is a compilation, not an original world survey. I don't think this is heavily debated by anyone at this stage. It clearly states that the map is made from source maps, not an original survey carried out by Piri Reis himself. Historians say that the quality and accuracy come from combining excellent European and Middle Eastern charts, especially Portuguese maps of the African coast and early Spanish Columbian data. The southern landmass is said by historians to not be Antarctica, but a distorted extension of South America. The distortions arise from trying to join maps made on different projections into a single unified world chart, a difficult feat even for modern cartographers. Some historians argue that Piri's map demonstrates how rapidly knowledge was shared between European and Islamic worlds, despite political rivalry. Now, if we look on the opposite side of this, we have the ancient advanced civilization theory. This theory was popularized by authors like Charles Hapgood, who wrote the maps of the ancient sea kings in 1966. He suggests that Piri Reis used source maps from an ancient seafaring civilization, capable of global exploration long before known history. Now, opponents of this theory claim these maps survived through classical and medieval times and were passed secretly to Renaissance cartographers. So one of the leading thinkers in this field of the ancient lost civilization theory is none other than Graham Hancock himself, the controversial Graham Hancock. Well, his main idea is that the Piri Reis map is evidence of a lost advanced civilization that existed before recorded history, and that likely ended before the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago. Now, his Antarctica claim is that he argues that the map shows Antarctica's coastline free of ice, suggesting it was charted by an ancient culture with sophisticated mapping abilities that we are severely underestimating. This follows in line with Charles Hapgood's theory that an earlier civilization mapped the world when Antarctica was ice-free, and the Earth's crust later shifted. Hancock then goes on to highlight Piri Reis's notes about using older charts, some from the time of Alexander the Great. This is proof that ancient knowledge survived and was passed down through civilizations. He suggests that prehistoric people may have understood global geography, longitude and latitude, far beyond what's accepted for ancient societies today. And this is a recurring theme with Graham Hancock, where he believes that mainstream archaeology does not give enough credit to the ancient people, and he seems to think, and I tend to agree with him too, to be honest, that there is potential for a lost civilization before the last ice age that was wiped out by the Younger Dryas impact, and we don't give them enough credit because there's many mysteries in this world that are inexplicable. Pardon the pun. You know, you've got the likes of the pyramid, the Bimini Road, the Stonehenge. There's so many different things. Göbekli Tepe. So, anyway, back to the point. As you can imagine, the mainstream scholars reject Graham Hancock's view on this and Charles Hapgood's. They note that Antarctica section actually aligns with South America when map distortions are corrected, and that Antarctica has been ice covered for millions of years. Nonetheless, Hancock's version of this remains popular in alternative history discussions for its imaginative challenge to conventional timelines. And I think, like I've said, I don't want to keep going on about this, but I think we need people like Graham Hancock to fight the status quo, because otherwise we won't have any alternative thinkers. We'll just be sticking to one idea and going forward when no one really knows the truth about a lot of things, so you've got to have people asking these questions and pushing the boundaries. Just while I'm talking about Graham Hancock, I've just remembered that he also mentions the Bimini Road structure. Now, the Bimini Road structure is an underwater rock formation that looks suspiciously man-made. Now, there's no confirmation whether it was man-made or it was natural, but if you take a look at it, if you just type in on Google the Bimini Road, you'll see it looks surprisingly and suspiciously man-made. But, nevertheless, it's underwater right now. But on the map, the Piri Reis Map, it seems to be depicted as above ground. So if you take a look at the map, you can look at the east coast of North America. It shows an island, which is exactly in the place that the Grand Bahama Banks is today. Now, we know that the Bimini Road is in the Grand Bahama Banks. But obviously, the last time the Bahama Banks and the Bimini Road was above water would have been thousands and thousands of years ago. So how could a man, Piri Reis, know about this in 1513 when the Bimini Road and the Grand Bahama Banks haven't been above ground in thousands and thousands of years? Clearly shows that he had previous knowledge passed down from Alexander the Great's time or Christopher Columbus. So I think that's definitely one of the most intriguing theories and questions, I suppose, is how did Piri Reis know about the Bimini Road when it was underwater? It is truly fascinating. But I don't want to keep going on about Graham Hancock and his theories, and they are very interesting, and I would advise everyone to read his books, Fingerprints of the Gods or The Magicians of the Gods, both brilliant reads, or watch his podcast episode for a more concise version of them. But yeah. Now, we also have the alien and ancient astronaut interpretations. Now, these always crop up when you've got some sort of mystery or something that can't be explained. There's always people that point to aliens straight away. Now, I'm not one of those people. Like, I like aliens and I like the alien theory or the supernatural theory of something extraterrestrial. But in this case, I just don't think there's any link or any shred of evidence that points to anything supernatural in that way. I think it points rather to ancient knowledge, but I don't know if it points to anything alien related. But obviously, fringe theorists do claim there's alien influence, but there's no credible evidence supporting this. So it's purely speculation, and even speculation that's hard to come by. I just thought I'd mention it, and I just kind of think that it's a bit of a band-aid. People like to just point to the aliens straight away. I think maybe we might be giving them too much credit, but yeah, I think we'll leave aliens out of this one. I don't think they have a place in it. So, of course, given all the mystery and given all the intrigue, of course, there's some scientific analysis done of the map. So, studies by historians such as Gregory C. McIntosh in 2000 show that when the map is corrected for projection distortions, the supposed Antarctica coastlines do align with South America's southern regions. So this is kind of more in line with the traditional historian point of view, rather than the alternative Charles Hapgood, Graham Hancock view. The geological data shows Antarctica has been covered in ice for at least several million years, far before what's considered conventional human civilization. Now, I don't really like this point of view too much because I think the human civilization thing, in air quotes, keeps getting pushed back. And I don't think it's fair for us to say that there was definitely no human civilization before this date. You know, when you have the Ice Age and you have the Younger Dryas impact theory, I think there's real evidence that there was advanced knowledge before the Ice Age. I mean, all you got to do is look at Göbekli Tepe. So when traditional and mainstream archaeology says, that Antarctica was covered in ice for at least 1 million years, what about before that? what about before the last ice age? What's to say there wasn't human civilization then, when even the traditional scholars are slowly pushing back the dates of human civilization? So I don't think that's set in stone, and I think that's definitely open for debate. So what makes the Piri Reis Map so significant? I mean, there's a lot of different reasons. Obviously, you've got the historical importance. The map offers a rare Ottoman perspective onto the New World, because most early surviving maps are European. So to get one from the Ottoman Empire is quite extraordinary anyway. It demonstrates how the knowledge from Portuguese, Spanish, Arab, and ancient sources all blended together in the early 16th century in Istanbul. It reflects the cosmopolitan exchange of geographic data across religious and even political lines. And then, of course, you've also got the cultural and public fascination with the map. When it was discovered in 1929, this coincided with the 20th century surge in interest in mysteries and lost civilizations. Authors, filmmakers, and pseudoscience circles seized on the Antarctica angle, amplifying its legend. So, I mentioned this in my last episode 7 on the Loch Ness Monster. When the media and when the public get a hold of an idea, it just starts to snowball. There's journal articles, there's media headlines, newspapers, films, documentaries, social media, podcasts. It all just snowballs, and it becomes an exponential growth curve in terms of its popularity and mystery. And that sort of happened with the Piri Reis Map. And I wouldn't say to a big enough scale to hit kind of the general public, because I don't think if you asked someone walking on the street, do you know what the Piri Reis Map is, they would probably say no. But within the historical and archaeology circles, this has taken on a life of its own. It's become one of the favourite topics in alternative history, if that's what you want to call it. And I think people like Graham Hancock are to thank for that. And I think even from a traditional scholarly perspective, even if they don't believe in its kind of ancient advanced civilization roots, it's still regarded as a brilliant example of early synthesis cartography. It's appreciated for its artistry, its annotations, its insight into the Ottoman naval intelligence networks, and it's still impressive, even if you don't believe the roots of the ancient lost civilization. And things like this just kind of embody humanity's ongoing tension between knowledge and mystery, and our urge as humans to explain what seems impossible or inexplicable. And the Piri Reis Map's allure endures because it sits at the crossroads of genuine history, and then you've also got that alternative kind of speculation, I suppose, in there too. So you've got the kind of the best of both worlds. You've got a genuine, authentic 16th century map that can be appreciated for its construction, its blend of source maps, and then you've also got mysterious depictions on the map, and that do align with alternative theories too. So you've kind of got something for everyone on there. It reminds us that maps are as much about the world we know as the world we dream might exist. Now, in my humble opinion, and let me just preface this by saying I am not claiming to know this as fact or as 100% truth. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just merely giving my opinion after looking at the evidence and coming to a conclusion in this is what I believe. And I feel strongly about it, but I'm open to being disproven, or if I'm shown evidence to the contrary, I'm happy to change my mind. I don't take stuff like this personally. I form my opinion based on the facts I see. If new facts arise, my opinion can shift very easily to align with the current facts. So, in my opinion, I think that before the last ice age, there was an advanced civilization. And when I say advanced, I don't mean phones and electricity and VR headsets and AI. That's not what I mean. Advanced in terms of they weren't just hunter-gatherers. All you got to do is look at Göbekli Tepe and look at sites like that. There is clear evidence that they knew a lot more than we are giving them credit for. Now, who's to say that they could not build ships and travel around the seas? So I think for me, my thoughts kind of align more with that of Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson, and even Jimmy Corsetti. So I think there was a civilization that fed the seas, that created maps and kept knowledge that was passed down and stored in the Library of Alexandria and was passed down generation to generation, and obviously eventually those maps came into the hands of the likes of Piri Reis, who then used their maps alongside Portuguese maps and Spanish maps that he had around there, and kind of tried to blend them all together to keep a memory of the knowledge that was passed down to him. And that is what the Piri Reis Map is. It's a combination of knowledge that was passed down from ancient civilizations and from his contemporaries too, with the Portuguese, the Spanish, and obviously the Ottomans too. I think it was a nice blend of all that, and I think with the Bimini Road structure, I mean, look, you've got an island east of North America, which is in exactly the same place that the Grand Bahama Rocks is today. Now, that's too much of a coincidence for me. And then on that, you've got a depiction of a row of megaliths, like a road, which looks exactly like Bimini Road, which is in the Grand Bahama Banks, also depicted on there. But the twist is that when Piri Reis was alive, the Grand Bahama Banks and the rocks of the Bimini Road were underwater. So how could he have known? You know, so it's like that only points to knowledge that was passed down to him, you know, and so thousands and thousands of years ago, there had to have been some sort of civilization, or potentially millions of years ago, you know, 13, 14 million years ago, before the Ice Age, someone would have seen the Grand Bahama Banks and the Bimini Road to know that it was there. So when you've got that, you've got the southern landmass. Now, I know that's a bit more debatable in terms of it does match up to South America's coastlines when it's corrected. But I still think it's interesting, and I still think there is debate surrounding that. So, you know, give me your opinion on that. What is your opinion on the southern landmass mystery? Do you believe it's South America's coastline kind of distorted, or do you believe that it is actually pointing to Antarctica? For me personally, I think there's enough evidence in the map to point to lost knowledge that, you know, may have been burned down with the Library of Alexandria. So I think that's the case. Right, guys, so that is everything. That is the Piri Reis Map. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I found this quite interesting, and I still do find this interesting. With these sort of episodes, I don't really go into them thinking I'm going to solve it. I just kind of want to go in and assess all the evidence, think about both points of view. So today we looked at the scholarly, traditional historian point of view, and then we also looked at the alternative view, like I mentioned, Graham Hancock and Randall Carson and Jimmy Corsetti, that sort of field. So feel free to let me know what you guys think. Send me an email or just leave a comment. And I'll be happy to discuss. I could talk about this sort of thing for the rest of my life. That is hopefully the plan. But yeah, the Piri Reis Map, what an absolutely fascinating piece of history. And I think at the very least, everyone can appreciate the knowledge and the blend of cultures and religions and politics that went into the map. So let me know what you guys think of the Piri Reis Map. Is it evidence of a lost civilization, or is it just a beautiful ancient map? Till next time, peace.